Welcome to the People in Your Neighborhood podcast, the podcast where I introduce you to the people in our neighborhood of Northern Indiana, people making an impact that you may not have a chance to meet. Today I'm talking with Yolo López Pérez. She is a bilingual journalist working here in Northern Indiana. We'll learn about that and also about how she developed the first Indiana Latino Business Expo through her work with the Center for Healing and Hope. We're here at Fables Books. You can check out the video I did on their opening. That'll be down in the description and it'll be up in the little card that they have here, but you can check that out. Take a look at Fables Books. I just want to thank them for letting us to have Yolo and myself here. Hi Yolo, thanks for coming.
Thanks Brian, thanks for inviting me.
Before we get too deep to talk about, I like to find out a little bit about the people I'm talking to. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I guess we can begin with, I was born in Guadalajara, Mexico. It's the city known for its wonderful mariachi. If you've seen the guys really dressed up in the sombreros and the instruments, that's the mariachi. I'm really proud of that city of mine. I moved here with my mom when I was 7, not knowing any word of English. So I grew up in Elkhart, and then I went to Goshen College. And now I live in Goshen with my husband, who is part Italian, and my 2 daughters, who are 4 and 5.
All right, cool. What has your professional career been like?
Yeah, so my professional career has been interesting. I majored in broadcasting when I went to college. I've always had a passion for journalism since I was in high school. I was on that TV show. And I actually came up with an idea of having a really cool intro of, okay, we got to be really hardcore, and it was a fun intro. I'm not going to say what it was, but so that's when I noticed my passion for writing and telling stories, similar to you, Brian. So in college, I majored in broadcasting, which gave me a really broad spectrum of video production, writing, communication pieces, a lot of that. But my other passion is also to help people. So after graduating, I worked at Fox 28 as a production assistant. Well, before that, then an intern and some MJ multimedia journalist. But then I worked in WFRN doing radio news as well, and I really loved that. But then I felt, okay, I need to explore a different side of me that loves helping people. So I moved away in 2012 to Costa Rica, and down there I was pretty much an independent, person who helps people that are in need. Okay. And I just had that passion. I said, okay, I want to be able to tell stories. I did not get to do a lot of that on my own, but I did get to meet a lot of people. So I lived down there for about 3 years, and then another opportunity came up to work freelance for another ministry that was based out of the U.S. that was similar in Costa Rica. So I moved to Mexico, lived with my dad, who lives down there currently still, and I did that for about a year. And then there was another opportunity in Panama, like the country Panama. Okay. So then I took that one as well. So I've had different tasks to, the people that hired me at that time was, they had a specific goal. This is what we need. It was related to broadcasting. And so they would provide some assistance, whether it was the housing, and then I would be able to tell stories and be with the locals in those places. So that was quite a phenomenal part of my life. And after, I think it was 4 or 5 years, I came back. So I got back, I would say 2.5 years ago, almost 3. And I still wanted to help people, so I looked up nonprofit organizations in the area, and I found Center for Healing and Hope. So that's currently where I'm at the Center for Healing and Hope, and I can talk more about that later, but it's a nonprofit urgent care clinic that helps people that are marginalized or don't have access to any health insurance.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to talk about the doing things for people. I'm 45. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I teach right now, so I love being able to work with the students, have them be able to see opportunities in their lives. What's one thing that you did, or a couple of, like a favorite memory, like when you were in Costa Rica or doing something else, like maybe how you were able to actually help somebody or a group of people. What was one of those things?
Sure. So in Costa Rica, one of the examples that I can think of, I was working for a nonprofit ministry that does Bible teachings on video, high quality Bible teachings, and they were based out of the US. So I was doing some video production work for them and translating into Spanish. But then the other part of me, I began meeting locals and just kind of creating little groups of fellowship, and let's just spend time together. I want to learn about you. They really wanted to know about me as a Mexican. Apparently Costa Ricans have a good impression of Mexicans, but I felt kind of like on the spotlight, like they were just asking so many questions. So getting to develop those relationships with the Ticos, learning their customs because it's so different from Mexico. And then a lot of them, I would go on foot, and specifically there was one family who I met. He was living with his wife and 3 little kids in the town called Sabalito, and his house was falling apart. And so I took footage of it. I said, "Can I try to raise money for you?" And he's like, "Sure." Like, he was very humble, and the house was in horrible shape. So out of just my passion to help, I had my camera at the moment, and I just started taking different video shots. And a long story short, I put it together, put it on YouTube. I think you can actually still find it. I don't know what the title is, but it's still up there. And I put this emotional music in the background, and I explain with text how much we wanted to raise and why it was important for him to have a roof over, his house and not metal that was, not only breaking, but it was hurting their health, and they were getting wet. His whole family was getting wet. So I ended up being able to help him financially through some of the donations that were coming in. So that's one of my favorite. In Panama, I had a lot of favorite ones as well, but my top was finding a neighborhood of one of the most poor neighborhoods in the area where I was at. I was in the farm area, the countryside. Okay. I wasn't in the city. So through my relationships and knowing other tourists that were in the area, but I lived there for a year, I got to know this small neighborhood of parents who have a lot of children because they don't have access to, healthcare or family planning services, whatever it is that they need. They didn't have clean water. So there was all these kids roaming around, and apparently that neighborhood was known for that. It was known for a lot of kids without adequate clean water and adequate food and nutrition. A lot of kids with, obesity, and that's when I started realizing health was really important to me. And to make another long story short, I also ended up pulling together people, especially people that were visiting from the States that wanted to make an impact as themselves, not necessarily groups, just couples. So I would take them to this neighborhood after I spent a lot of time with the kids. And I also did a video clip. I put a video clip together and I put it on YouTube. And we were able, with time, we bought like Gatorade jugs, and we had one house that would say, okay, we'll provide this for the kids. We were able to put concrete and shade into like this community house that turned into. So that's my favorite out of that.
That's cool. Like being able to use your skills to be able to and I think as a journalist, you just think there's a natural draw to people's stories, and so that's really awesome. So with that national or international experience, I guess, being able to help other people, you came back home, wanted to come back and help, and you started working with the Center for Healing and Hope. Talk about like what you do now with them. What are some of the things you do? Sure.
So at the Center for Healing and Hope, as I said earlier, it's a nonprofit urgent care center and now chronic care as well that attends people that don't have any insurance. There's a lot of reasons why people don't have insurance. They either don't qualify, they are new in the area, or they just switch jobs, or they're going through a financial crisis, many reasons. But the Center for Healing and Hope focuses on providing that affordable care that we have. That's, we all know it's an issue nationwide. But that's one of the reasons why I love working there, because it's a small clinic doing a huge impact and one of life's most important needs. Because if we can be healthy, then we can work, then we can attend our kids, we can attend our spouses. Health is just very essential. So at the Center for Healing and Hope, I started as a patient advocate working with patients. So I would listen to their stories. Again, I loved it because patients would come and I would say, what do you need to be seen for? Some of them could not make the payments. It's not expensive. It's a $40 payment to see a doctor, and they volunteer their time, and the nurses as well. So we're super grateful for that. So I would get to hear their story. They would say, oh, I just moved in, or I'm going through a financial crisis, whatever it was. And then we would find ways to help them still get seen without that being an obstacle. I did that for, I would say, almost a year, and then I moved into development. So development deals more with, now that I know the story, now that I know the people we work with, now how can we continue supporting the clinic through the donations of individuals?
Okay, then it ties. I mean, it's like you talked about finding those ways to help people. It's one of the things I've loved about moving to this community. How hard of a job is that? I mean, do you find that there's a lot of, and I'm sure there's always a need, but how have you seen people step up?
Our donors have been amazing. Our donors are always very caring and supportive. It is challenging at times, especially when growth happens, expenses happen, but it's a good thing. So we have good problems in a way. But our donors have been very responsive. And that's one of the reasons I enjoy this development positions, because not only do I do events that raise money to do good in the community, to provide an essential need, but I also get to tell stories. So it's not maybe through video this time, but I still get to tell the story, and I get to talk to patients still. I'm able to be on the phone when one of our secretaries is sick, and the patient just starts talking to me, and I just sit there and I'm like, oh, you're tugging at my heart. But yeah, it's been nice.
One of the other things that I read about is you talked about creating the Indiana Latino Business Expo. What is that, and then why did you start that?
So the Indiana Latino Business Expo is 2 years new. We launched it, the Center for Healing and Hope launched it as a fundraising event, but also as a part of outreach to the Latino community because of the number of patients that are Latino that come to the clinic. And we have Latino businesses that support the clinic financially. And so one day we had an open house and we invited those business owners and we said, now what can the clinic do for you to help? And this idea came up, it'd be great if there was some sort of event that could unite us so we could get to know each other, and we could, also network with other broader businesses in the area that we're not used to. And so that's when I thought, okay, I know some of these business owners from Elkhart, Goshen, some in South Bend. Why don't we do this event? And the board approved it. And what's been really nice is that all the proceeds go to Center for Healing and Hope.
Cool.
So we just had one in June. It was the second one, and it was a huge success. So we had about 40 business participating with an exhibit, just showcasing the services that they offer, products, and an opportunity to network within themselves and to also meet the resources of our local chambers. So we also partnered with our chambers to be there and provide that, because I consider ourselves, we can be that starting point, that connection point, but they're the experts when it comes to business. So it's been a nice partnership.
Is it important to you to, this is a leading question, I know the answer, but why is it important for you to be able to bring this information into the Latino community or make it more obvious to the Latino community?
I definitely think it's important to be able to provide this sort of support to the Latino community. One, because there's already a growing population in Goshen, and as we know, in Michiana and nationwide. Two, because I truly believe when I was speaking to our local chamber partners, I was telling them, they were expressing some of their goals and wanting to do outreach, but they didn't have, the language or some of those cultural aspects. So to me, it's an honor to be able to help that way, to be able to say, you guys have amazing resources. How can we partner to then make this demographic or these people more powerful in what they're already doing? They're already opening up businesses. They're going to do it either way. So why not give them the correct resources and help them grow, and then that'll benefit everybody else.
I think just listening to you talk about it, I think it's something that the Latino community is going to do anyways. It's something that the non-Latino community, I have something I want to sell. I want to be successful. I want to reach as big an audience as possible. So I think that I can't see it, it's a win-win situation. Yep. Let's talk about you talked a little bit, touched on the increasing Latino community. I teach at the middle school, and it's, just 50%. How have you seen that change since you moved here? How have you seen the community change?
I have definitely seen a huge change in the amount of not only immigrants that continue to come, but just the way our culture is growing within the United States. And it's a fascinating topic to me. We could go so many ways, and there's so many things to say about it. And I get really passionate, so I call my dad, who's in Mexico. He is a social worker and a doctor and has a bunch, I can't keep up with all his degrees, but one thing he keeps reminding me of is, don't forget your culture, or try to teach your daughters, the Latino culture. And he knows that it's a struggle passing on the Spanish. I'm struggling with that as we speak, because every day they use English, and at home, even though I speak Spanish and my husband speaks Spanish a little bit, there's still that struggle. So it's definitely changing. But I know from talking to other people, and one of those is my husband, who said, I really wish I would have learned Italian, or I would have loved to pass that down to our kids. So it's more challenging, especially the more Latino kids are born here. The more they're born here, the more chances they have of losing that language. And then they meet other kids, and then it's like, we're from the same background, but we speak Spanish, no big deal. And then if we as parents don't do a good job at encouraging the cultural ways and the language, then that's how it gets lost. And the next thing you know, we're going to have a lot of Latinos in the United States of America who don't speak any Spanish, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's definitely a huge twist.
Well, it's a piece of that culture. And like your husband, my grandparents are first generation Americans, and so by the time they didn't speak any German around me, and it's for me, being a journalist and being interested, it's watching the students in my class are some of the, it's good. They are speaking to each other in Spanish, and they I think they don't realize it, that richness of a culture that they could have, and how to make it blend with everything else. So it's
well, and one of the things I really appreciate about Goshen is the program at one of the schools that is, I don't have a lot of the details of it, but I know that they teach Spanish, not only to kids that speak Spanish, but also to any other child who who wants to learn Spanish, so they don't have to be Latino. I think that's the way we're going to be growing as a nation. The more people can get on board with speaking more than one language, no matter what it is, the more we're going to be able to succeed, and we're going to be able to enhance job opportunities. It's been a huge help for me to be able to speak both languages. But I do remember yelling at my dad and my mom and saying, I don't want to talk Spanish, get away from me, as a teenager. And but they pushed through it. They pushed, and I speak it.
Good for them and good for you. I know as a parent, and as a parent, I'm sure that there's things that you fight with your daughters with, but that's cool. What's next? Do you have some plans for the future? I came across you by your Facebook page, bilingual reporter, like, ooh, there's somebody else, and you're kind of doing freelance news, just kind of trying to tell the stories in the community. What are some of the things you continue to do with your journalism background?
So journalism is something I'm never going to leave. As journalists, I think it's always going to stick to us. So I definitely do that on the side as freelance. I do voiceover work for marketing agencies who need a nice voice, and I can modify my voice. You'd be surprised how I can do different types of voices. So on the side, I love doing that. I love telling stories, or anytime I get an opportunity like you, Brian, to meet someone who's incredible and to help them stand out in some way, or provide some sort of educational, informative topic to the people that are hungry to learn something new, I want to take opportunity of that. So right now, there's not much of a schedule. I'm still trying to, figure that out and balance family life and work and everything. But a lot of that page is for updates on events. I do a lot of bilingual stuff. Right now, it's mostly Spanish, but my goal is to do more English and Spanish. So anything that's related to events, community outreach, or health is my top interest in promoting and letting people know out there about it.
Continuing with that, you said you do once a week. You do a newscast on La Raza. Why do you do that?
Yeah, I do it because, for one, again, I go back to I love informing people what's happening. There's a huge need to do more things in Spanish, and so for me, I love sharpening my skills in any way when it comes to Spanish. It's not the same writing news in English as it is in Spanish. So there's definitely some skill development, but I've been doing this already for 2.5 years with La Raza, and I'm super proud of the way that I've come along. At first, it's a weekly segment. Okay. So every Friday at 8 a.m. and at 5 p.m., listeners on the radio can hear the top stories of the whole week. So I do a little bit of, I do mostly local, but then if there's something really important happening at the nationwide level, I'll report on that as well. And then once in a while, I'll throw in some fun stories, and if I'm able to get some sound bites from people, I'll also incorporate that in there. But yeah, I love doing that, and my goal is to continue to sharpen my skills in both languages for radio and TV in the future.
As a journalist, I always loved asking, getting people to tell their stories, but then part of that was the emotional connection. How do you feel when maybe you run into somebody like, oh, hey, you're telling our story, or hey, I'd love to hear you on the radio. It's good to have somebody around here talking to me, talking to us. How's that feel when you make that connection off air?
It feels wonderful. I love that, first of all, that people can acknowledge that there's something that can be shared, and that, whether I'm providing the opportunity or they're providing the opportunity, I think any opportunity we can get to learn or to help each other, for me, that's the way. I'm going to keep going back to this. It's the way we're going to succeed as a nation. It's the way we're going to succeed as professionals and developing ourselves. That's the other point, that any opportunity that I can get to help develop someone as their professionalism or their health, I try to look for those opportunities and those resources, again, because of my background with, I've seen the need. There's many different needs. I know we're not going to solve the problem. We're always going to have those issues. But I think that's why I'm super passionate about the work that different nonprofit organizations do, or even journalists, or anybody working, even stay-at-home moms. Everybody's doing a part in the community to make better people.
I appreciate it. I love that passion that you've got to, that there's going to be rough spots, but you're doing what you can to make that change. And there's so many people I've met in Goshen, and so I really appreciate you taking the time to tell me about that and tell us about that. And if people want to find you or see your work, where's the best place for them to look?
Sure. So you can start with either LinkedIn, find Yolo López DeMarco, or
I'll put the link in the description.
Perfect. Or the public Facebook page, where you can see Spanish updates or the events or what I was talking about. I still have my public last name, so it's Yolo López Pérez. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook, social media, Twitter. Yeah, reach out to me.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brian.
That's it for this episode of The People in Your Neighborhood. Thanks for listening, but don't stop here. Get out, meet someone new, and learn more about the people in your neighborhood. Keep up with this segment and my Going Local segments by liking or subscribing to us on Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, or Apple Podcasts. Just search up Going Local Indiana.